Hello, everyone. Welcome to this afternoon's Live with Diva. It's a special edition, and we're going to talk about the latest superhero movie that just released this Thursday locally in theaters, 3rd March of 2022, and it's our favorite Caped Crusader, The Batman. For those who are new to my live streams and to my persona, I'm Red.Diva, lifestyle and pop culture blogger based in Singapore. And I started this live stream about 2020 during the pandemic. And let me just put myself on screen so you'll be able to see me. Hello. So then after that, we also included special live streams for movie reviews because we just love talking about it. And a lot of the movie reviews are based in Western time zones, and this is a Singaporean time zones for all the Southeast Asian people and neighboring countries, the fans who are here who like to join us to discuss about movies that we love. And together with me today, we have my geek pals who are huge DC fans. They are Atty, Jong, and Jedd. Hi guys, how are you? Welcome to the Batcave.
Oh wow! Oh wow! It's like bad
Special effects.
upgrade.
Yeah, you're doing really good. I'm pretty
Yeah.
excited to talk about this. So,
Yeah, I know, right? We've been brewing for what, 3 days or 4 days?
yeah.
Brewing.
I just recovered from COVID, so if I'm sneezing or anything, I apologize in advance. But yeah, so the ticking clock was that I need to test negative by the time the movie comes out. So that was like my motivation. So the morning I was supposed to see it, I tested negative. So yes.
Yay.
And then I went and I watched it
Yes.
at night, very late, and then I got up very early in the morning next day for work. Then I went to work and I was miserable.
All right, before we go on, introduce yourself, starting from Jong, Jedd, and then Atty.
Hi, I'm John. I'm a very big comic book fan, and I read everything and just indulge in all that. Yeah, and then move on to Jedd.
Hi, I'm Jedd. I'm a film critic and writer. I've written for places like F Magazine, InSync, Chris World, Catch Play Plus, and
Woo.
I am also Tina's geek bro. And I've
Yeah.
known John since we were little kids, and I introduced John to Tina.
Yes.
Hi, I'm Atty. I'm a Superman fan. Yeah, I read comics. I play games. I watch anime. Basically your run of the mill nerdy stuff.
Yeah,
So
and I'm so glad to have known her too because Geek Girls Unite. Woo! And also before we go ahead, I'm going to warn everybody that the first half is a spoiler-free segment in case you're watching. And if you decide to leave halfway through, I'll give a warning again so that we'll be then talking about more detailed stuff and maybe Easter eggs or some other plot lines that we won't want to give away. So we'll come at a midway point. So if you want to leave before that and watch the movie and then watch this whole entire live stream post live, it's still possible on my social media websites. So before we go on, Jedd will give us the spoiler-free summary of The Batman.
Yes, so The Batman is a standalone movie. It is separate from the DC Extended Universe. So this version of the character is different from Ben Affleck's version. It's different from Christian Bale's version. So we are being introduced to a new version of Batman. And in this movie, Batman Bruce Wayne is played by Robert Pattinson. And we meet him in his second year as the masked vigilante Batman in Gotham City. And his secret identity is that of reclusive billionaire Bruce Wayne, who has not been seen in public ever since his parents were murdered many, many years ago. So the main threat of this movie is the terrorist called the Riddler, the serial killer, and he's played by Paul Dano. So he is targeting Gotham's elites, and he is leaving letters addressed to Batman containing puzzles at the crime scene. So Lieutenant James Gordon, played by Jeffrey Wright, he is the only person in the GCPD who trusts Batman and brings Batman into the investigation into Riddler. So some of the Riddler's clues are pointing towards the Iceberg Lounge. This is owned by Penguin, Oz Cobblepot, played by Colin Farrell. And he is the right-hand man of Carmine Falcone, played in this movie by John Turturro, who is one of the big mob bosses in Gotham. So one of the employees of the Iceberg Lounge is a woman named Selena Kyle, played by Zoe Kravitz. And she is looking into the disappearance, possible murder of a friend and roommate. So this is where she comes into contact with Batman as well. And the whole conspiracy involves people who might be actually very close to Batman. So as Batman goes further into unraveling the conspiracy and solving the mystery of Riddler, we start getting closer and closer to something that might very much hurt him.
Thank you, Jedd. You're
You're
the
welcome.
best when it comes to this.
That is my attempt at a spoiler-free summary of the Batman.
What are the one or two, when you're sitting there, it's like 2 hours and 56 minutes long, nearly 3 hours, one of the longer superhero movies, not counting Zack Snyder's extravaganza on HBO, but that was like kind of split into chapters as well. So this is like nearly 3 hours. What are your one or two primary thoughts that struck you when you were sitting there watching this movie? We'll go around again, and maybe starting from John, and I'll give mine the last.
For me, it's definitely very very different from what we are used to from seeing from Batman movies. It's a lot darker in tone, and you don't actually feel that it's 3 hours long when you're watching the movie.
Yeah,
I
right.
think I think the way they paced it was
Mm.
paced very well. The music helped you move from scene to scene. The transitions wasn't too overdone, and yeah, and I would say I it does bring back. I mentioned this to you guys earlier. It brings back the detective part of
Mm.
DC movies where the focus is a lot more on the whole mystery or conspiracy involving the case rather than the typical superhero fare where it follows the hero specifically, just the hero alone.
Mm.
This one, there's a lot of room for the supporting characters to actually contribute to the entire experience. Yeah,
Eddie,
that would be it.
Eddie,
For me,
yeah.
I thought it was Jedd. Yeah, definitely like in the 3 hours, right? I thought it was paced well. Like what John said, with the music, how the music act like a timer, for all the action
Mm.
scenes. And then with the 3 hours, we are able to see the growth of Bruce Wayne slash Batman from what he is to what he becomes later on. And yeah, it's a throwback to noir films.
Mm.
It's Zodiac all over again. But it's superhero. I mean, technically, Batman isn't really a superhuman, right?
Mm.
Yeah, but it's like Zodiac for the new age, so to speak. Um, yeah, like I don't know, my favorite thing is like how it started off with the narration. And it's raining in like Gotham slash Glasgow. uh, yeah, that's pretty much what I love about it.
And my geek bro, Jedd.
Yeah, I have lots and lots of thoughts about this movie. So do we have 3 hours? So
One
before
or
I
two.
went into to watch the movie, I had a friend who attended a screening like 2 or 3 weeks earlier
Yeah,
because he was part of the
correct.
online press
Was that
conference.
our
And
favorite Marcus?
yeah, so Marcus, like, he kind of felt lukewarm about it. Like, he
Oh,
didn't love the movie. He thought it was okay. He said that he thought that it was good, but that he felt the 3 hours, he felt that it was long. And also, he didn't think that, like, the approach, he viewed it as a valid approach, but it didn't work for him. Like, the
okay.
characterization of
That's
Batman. So,
interesting.
hopefully, I'm not, like, putting words in Marcus's mouth. But that was interesting because all of the major critics have given it very, very good reviews. So I think it did help that my expectations were tempered a little bit by hearing from Marcus, whom I do very much trust and is a good friend, and I like I trust his opinions on things. But I love this movie. I think that for me, one of the things that I loved about it is that it doesn't feel constrained in the way that a lot of franchise movies do now. Because a lot of franchise movies or comic book movies, they feel like there's a burden to link to everything else. It has to exist in a very established framework. But
Yeah,
this is a chance to create a new Gotham City, a new Batman, and it isn't held back by having to, okay, we need to refer to this, we need to link back up to that, and you need to draw the dots back to this. And I felt that Matt Reeves, as a filmmaker, I really enjoyed a lot of his earlier films, and I think he had a very distinct vision, but it also functions really well as an adaptation. I think it's very smart in the elements from the comics and from the other media of Batman that it takes from. So you hear this a lot, right? People always say, why is there a new Batman? Why is there another Batman? For me, as a Batman fan, I want there to be lots and lots and lots of interpretations of Batman, because I feel like as a character, he supports and sustains many different interpretations. And so on a surface level, you look at this and you're like, okay, it's another dark, really Batman. But it is very different in a lot of ways from the earlier adaptations. But yet, there are many recognizable elements, many elements that as fans we feel you gotta have it in there that they do have. So to me, as someone who is interested in the art of an adaptation, how do you change, how do you adapt a story to a different medium? That to me is something that really appeals to me, how they world build in this movie specifically for this movie. Like the Gotham in this movie is specific to this movie. But when you look at it, you recognize it as Gotham.
Yeah.
You look at Batman, you recognize him as Batman, and yet there is a flavor that they're going for where it's a very distinct vision. And that's one thing that I really liked about this, is that it's its own thing, but it's recognizably Batman. And that's like the best thing I can say about it.
All right, for me, right, when I first, I stopped watching the trailers after the first one came out. That was like a deliberately and conscious decision, because I found that trailers nowadays leak way too many things. And when you want to go there like with a mindset of a fan plus kind of reviewer critic, you want to go there with bang bang, go there, get the very first impression into your mind, and that's like that thing that sticks into your brain actually, rather than being influenced by a lot of other things. And I also stopped. I didn't read many of the critics either, the media critics that came out when they were, they had their early screenings. So in the first place, I wasn't a very big fan of Robert Pattinson. Not that I was against him being Batman, just not a very big fan of him. So when I went in there, I just went in there with not much expectations whatsoever. And I just like, when it hit the first part, where the narration and the lighting and how Gotham was being, depicted, and how the story starts from the train, and he's prowling around incognito. And it struck me that this is something so unique, because it's not just like you saying a detective story, but it's almost like we as just readers or pure human beings could actually be living in such a realistic world. It could be Tokyo, it could be Chicago. It's like a city that we know. And it makes it even more, the experience more real, because it's not just like we are inundated with superhero movies that are bathed in fantasy, Wonder Woman somewhere in a Greek kind of fantasy world, and then you have Aquaman, but here is something that you can really identify with. There are trains, there are tall buildings, and there's traffic all around, and it's raining, and it's almost like any other Raffles place in Singapore, but there is Batman. So that struck me. I think it was a very interesting experience, because it gave me new eyes on what a superhero movie can be. Not just about the detective parts, which I absolutely enjoyed, because you have no idea how many murder mystery and procedural series and movies I've watched throughout the years, even like Brit ones and Aussie ones, and the US ones. So this was very enjoyable because of that as well, because I love procedural and detective stories. The other thing I thought was, like, compared to the other Batman movies that I do enjoy as well, Matt Reeves gave a lot of room for the supporting characters to kind of show what they are really about. Of course, the main one, which was Selena Kyle, that I really enjoyed, and Jeffrey Wright's Jim Gordon as well. Those are the ones. It wasn't, like, of course there was a villain, but like for other superhero movies, they ramp up like the super villain is the thing. Although here there is the Riddler, but it wasn't like overshadowed, like the villains overshadowed the story and becoming like the thing, all the time. There was kind of balance, which I found was quite unique as well compared to some other blockbuster superhero movies. So that's my thought. First thought that kind of flashed into my mind when I was sitting there. Now on the reverse side, I know we have a lot of good things to say. I think all of us like the movie a lot. What are the things that you found that you weren't so quite on board about it? Not all movies are perfect, so let's talk about some of the little things which maybe you found like,
Are we going in the same order? So John, then Atty, then me.
It doesn't matter. Jedd, you can go first.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So
Jedd's gonna
yeah,
set the bar.
Jedd has a lot of thoughts.
Jedd has a lot of things
I
to
do have a
say.
lot of thoughts. Yes. I wrote like a 1,000-word review and it's like barely scratching the surface. So anytime there's a movie like this where there are a lot of fan expectations, where everyone has in their head the perfect Batman, everyone when they're reading the comics or they're watching the movies or animated series, they have in their head, okay, they're taking little bits and pieces and in their mind there's a perfect Batman. So obviously no one version is going to match all of that. So I think that one of the big criticisms of this movie is people didn't like the characterization of Bruce Wayne himself. That there wasn't enough of a duality for a lot of audiences between Bruce Wayne and Batman. Like when he takes off the cowl, he's basically the same. But I think that is part of the intent. I think the intent is that this is a Batman who's very much trapped in his own head. It's a Bruce Wayne who is trapped in his own head. And over the course of the movie, you see him gradually, like maybe he comes out of that. Maybe he learns a different way of looking at the world and of dealing with the problems that he's dealt with. So that's one thing. I think the other thing is that, and this is the risk, right? The risk is that this is a year 2 story and they are very conscious about not giving you all the iconography. Like the bat suit is not fully there. The Batmobile is not fully there. The Batcave is not fully there. Right? Like Catwoman, she has the cat suit, she has the whip, but she has like a balaclava, she doesn't have the goggles, So yeah, Penguin doesn't have an umbrella, right? He doesn't have a top hat. So it's like we are on our way. The promise is that eventually, if we are in this world for 5, 10, 20 years, we will catch up to a point where it's recognizably all of the Batman iconography. So that's the risk, because if you sell this movie using the iconography that's not fully there, I think it turned a lot of people off. It turned a lot of people off when they're like, that doesn't look to me like a Batmobile, that doesn't, what's going on with this and that. So it needs you to be on board with the year 2 status.
Yeah.
And then the third thing for me, the main thing is that I understand, right? I understand that if you're a hardcore DCEU fan, it's disappointing that this isn't the solo Ben Affleck movie, because for many years we were looking forward to that, and that was how it was developed, and Matt Reeves was brought on board when Ben Affleck was still attached. So as much as I enjoy this movie and as much as I really like this version of Batman and Gotham City, there's a part of me that wishes this were the Batman versus Deathstroke movie with Ben Affleck and Joe Manganiello that they were teasing for many years. So I do have a bit of sympathy for people who are mourning that, but that doesn't make me hate this movie because it is not that, So I think that balance is something that perhaps a lot of fans, they can't muster up, they can't find in themselves, because once you get very attached to an idea, you get very upset when something deviates from that, Yeah, so those are my, like, not 100% the things that I have issues with, I guess, but overall I do really, really like it.
I do agree with Jedd, because as a comic book reader, I see many versions of Batman, so it's very easy for me to adapt and to understand, okay, this is Batman in this part of his life, this is Batman and another part of his life. But for the casual viewers, it might be a bit of a shock to see Batman not at his peak. He's not most of the movie takes place at night, so you only really see Batman most of the time. Bruce Wayne is only just a little bit of snippets here and there, and when he's Bruce Wayne, he's still very dull, he's still very sad, still dealing with the deaths of his parents, and I think that is very different from most of the other Bruce Waynes that everybody knows, like especially in Nolan's Batman, where Christian Bale, when he's out of the suit, he's very confident, he's very
Christian Bale is the best
charismatic,
the most stable Bruce Wayne.
Like he takes
No,
all the
I mean-
Russian ballerinas out on the yacht, so he has that persona of the playboy.
Yeah,
He has
of
already
the
built that
playboy.
up. Yeah,
Yes, and
Yeah.
he's very good in that duality. But I think uh it's also like you say, because this is year two,
Yeah,
Batman hasn't really found
It's a baby
how
bat.
to have the duality. He really only knows the persona of Batman. He doesn't know that he needs to keep up the persona of Bruce Wayne as well. If not, people are gonna catch on to who Batman is, and then people he cares about is gonna start coming under the crossfires. He
Mm.
slowly learns that throughout this movie, where um certain things happen, and he understands like, oh, okay, so my actions do have consequences, and the consequences is that I can't be everywhere, and there will be people that
Will
I'm
get hurt.
ineffectively, yeah, putting in danger. So it's a very good journey, but I think people need to, coming into this movie, people need to accept the fact that this is not Batman at his peak.
Yeah,
This is Batman still learning
yeah.
the ropes, so to speak.
Conversely though, there are a lot of people who have their partners who are not geeks at all. And I think this is a good entry point for those who have no idea what superheroes, who they are. They only know like, okay, there's Batman, but have no idea what their story is about.
So it's a guy dressed up as a bat.
Yeah, it's kind of like a entry point to them.
yeah. Because if you're walking into an MCU movie now, you need to have watched 25
Ah,
previous
yeah,
movies. You need to have
exactly.
done all the
Yes.
homework.
I'm like, who's this?
So this is very much like as an origin story that is not literally the
Correct,
origin. You can get in on the ground floor,
Yeah,
and I think
Yeah.
if you're really like a non-geek at all, it's an intriguing procedural. You're looking
Yeah.
at it from another point of view.
I mean, if you want, you can just take it as another detective movie, man.
detective story. All right, Eddie. What's your
The two guys have said like everything. But the only criticism I have is myself, okay, because it's probably me being dumb. Because the whole cipher part, okay, with the Riddler, the riddles, the puzzles, okay, yeah, it kind of flew past my head sometimes. So yeah, I think that's the only thing that it's my own thing lah, okay.
Me too,
But other than
I'd
that,
love to talk about the puzzles a bit later on because I think
Yeah.
that's
yes,
something that I was very excited about when they said Riddler because I
Yeah,
feel like
yeah.
a lot of times the live action media struggles to portray Riddler in a
Yeah.
threatening way.
it's Jim Carrey in our
I-
heads,
comedy.
right?
Yeah.
Mostly
I
my
do,
sister.
yeah.
Hello.
Hello.
I-
Bubble tea.
Another small thing is relating to the puzzles. I do think that it's unfortunate that they didn't show enough of the ciphers. They hinted of the ciphers, and they show them going through the ciphers, but they don't really go into
Go-
depth on how
Yeah.
Correct,
they
correct. That's why
figure
we
out
missed
the
on, like,
ciphers.
So I think
that's
that was why I
logic
was
break.
a bit like, huh?
Yeah,
yeah. So that's
I
one
went,
part a bit.
Yeah, it's a movie that's 3 hours long, but then there are many things where
Yeah,
like I
there's too
wish we
many
could spend a
things.
bit more time on
Correct.
that. I wish we could spend a bit more time with
Mm.
this
Yeah, it's
character
amazing.
on this plot point because apparently the original cut was 4 hours, so you can kind of tell that they were still trying to rein themselves in,
Yeah.
even though 3 hours already seems excessive. That's already a compromise. There is a version
Yeah.
of this that was 4 hours. Yeah,
Give it
Okay,
to us.
give it to me.
For me, I was a bit, I don't know, maybe some people who will have a beef on me for saying this, but lately, right, I feel like the villains in these kind of movies are those who have faced some inequality or injustice, like not injustice, poverty and being abandoned or they have mental issues. And sometimes I feel that it's like an excuse just to put that so that you're a villain, and then you justify that you're a villain, but then after that, it's back to status quo because it's okay you're a villain because you're like that. You get what I mean? And nothing is really resolved, but you're trying to make sure that society, the injustice there is being highlighted, but then they're villains. So you should excuse them, and then they're caught, then they're bad. But it's like many of the villains nowadays are like this. Sometimes I prefer that they don't have a real justification in a sense.
They're just evil for fun.
Yeah, they're such evil.
Jokers. They're
Sociopath.
basically Joker.
So for
I-
me, right, like I think the interesting thing about this, and I get what you mean, is that they are trying to show characters with a justification that the audience can relate to, but the way that they go about it is extreme. So the methods are extreme, even if they
and then
start
it's
from a
not
place you can
resolved
understand.
anyway. But in a way, I was so much afraid that it was going to go that way too much to the left. Where you have just like blah 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 blah, there's a lot of poverty, blah blah blah, the orphans are being abandoned, you're not helping the poor, blah blah blah. But then what? Then they're bad, so they're justified in doing this. So I'm kind of relieved that in a way, towards the end, there's something positive, which I won't mention now because it will be too spoilery. That kind of tempered my feeling, that initial feeling about supervillains in general in superhero movies for the last like 3 years or so. They're beginning to sound the same.
So one thing I do like is that the way Catwoman is handled is that they
Yeah.
very much emphasize the difference in her background and Batman's background.
Yeah.
That Catwoman functions as a way to kind of call Batman out. Like
Correct.
there's a scene
For
where
Catwoman, I wasn't so grating.
Yeah.
Was the Riddler part of that whole
so
entire-
so I think
They're
they're
trying
trying
to-
to
Find the difference between Bruce and Edward. Yeah.
yeah. And
Nashton.
I think they're trying to kind of show like if you are a victim of circumstance, there are different ways that manifests. And so
Yes,
Bruce
yeah.
Wayne is a victim of this circumstance. Edward Nashton is a victim of this other circumstance, and Selena Carr is a victim of this other circumstance. So these are three different people occupying the same world. And another thing to go back to that John and Tina mentioned as well earlier is that this is a movie where they emphasize the interconnectedness of the characters. Like Gotham feels like a real place in part
Yeah,
because everyone has an impact on everyone else. And I think why it doesn't feel bloated to me at 3 hours is because it doesn't feel like there are 100 subplots. It's like everyone is part of the same big.
It is
A
a
plot.
procedural, so
Yeah.
it kind of like funnel in, and I thought the script was very smart concerning that
Yeah.
because you can go so many ways. Like there are a lot of red herring, tangling here and there, and it doesn't get resolved. But if you manage to put it together into like the last third, and kind of makes sense, and also it's also the character journey of those people as well, including the
To me, it felt like a train, right? It felt like a train at the first stop Batman gets on. And then James Gordon gets on a train. And then Riddler gets on a train. And Catwoman gets on a train. And Penguin gets on a train. So you are following all the stops. And in a lot of other movies, it feels very disconnected. It feels very disjointed. It's like we need to bring this character in because contractually they need to be in. So here they are. You know, I mean, like Venom being in Spider-Man 3 is a prime example. Sony says we need to have it in there, so it's in there. So, but I didn't have that feeling with this movie. Any character who was in it felt like they had a role to play in the overarching
something
plot.
to contribute.
Yep. Like the threads joined, like they came together like nicely.
Yeah, that was quite impressive because as I went in, without much explanation, didn't see many trailers at all. Didn't even read any of the much of the news bits. I kind of like decided to ignore everything and was very pleasantly surprised because I was so afraid that it's going to be a lot of bloat. I felt the Eternals had a lot of bloat, and I was also like mildly dozing off in the middle with a lot of the exposition going on. So I was afraid that this is gonna be like this again, and then I'm gonna quite mildly disappointed. But no, it didn't feel 3 hours just flew by, because my brain was engaged, the experience was there visually, my eyes was, my ears with the soundtrack. So
Yeah.
it was a wonderful experience.
Agreed, man.
Yeah.
And
John, go ahead. Yeah, sorry. All three of us.
Yeah, it's okay. I do have one other thing that I might bring up later because it's a bit of a spoiler. I think I'll save it for later.
We'll put a pin in that.
Thinking about it. Yeah.
Like,
Okay, right now I'm gonna ask this question that I've been asking Jedd before he went to watch the preview for a few days, which was like I was afraid, right? The hour is nearly 3 hours long. For the rest who haven't watched it yet, when do you think is the best time for a pee break?
Yeah, so I was paying very close attention to it. Before we get to that, so I just wanted to add on to the point that, yeah, when you're talking about bloat, when you're talking about how much do you fit into this, when you're playing with a world like the world of Batman, where there are so many elements, so many characters, so many heroes and villains, and everyone is kind of familiar, everybody knows who all of these characters are, it's very tempting to either put too much in it or to put too little. And I think they chose the right amount to play with, knowing that this is the first step, that we are going to go further than that. Okay, so to go back to the question about when do you pee, this is something that was top of my mind. I was watching it, and because I was thinking, okay, 3 hours, for sure there's going to be like a stretch of 5 minutes where nothing happens. There's like a dance number or something, you can go to the toilet. There is not.
Yeah,
but,
I know, right?
There isn't. Like, everything is important. It's paced very well, I think. When people talk to each other, when there's a dialogue scene, it doesn't mean that you can turn off. You need to pay attention.
Some clues or something.
But I would say, okay, at around the 1 hour mark, Batman and Gordon are in front of the bat signal. You can go to the toilet. And then at around the 2 hour mark, Bruce Wayne goes to visit somebody else in the hospital. You can go to the toilet. So those are the only. Yes, that's the problem. The problem is that, like, I'm thinking in terms of like, what if you miss it? Will you be able to catch up with the plot?
Yeah, whether it adds to the plot or not.
But those two scenes are still very good scenes. Those two scenes are still good scenes. Yeah, so that's like, if you put a gun to my head. Right? Yeah, it's like, if I had to choose when would you go to the toilet, it would be either of those two scenes. But honestly, if you can hold it, you should hold it.
Wow, I'm trying to think of it. I can't think of anything.
Right? Is that right? Like, yeah.
No, I was just glued to my seat.
It's a good
There isn't like
I didn't need to go.
they go to the zoo for 10 minutes. There isn't that kind of a thing.
Yeah, the problem is that the little downtime is too short for you to make a dash to the restroom.
To run
Next scene is
down and
important.
run
Yeah.
And now
because the next scene after that is like there's like a police raid or something, and then
now the restroom from the movie theaters are so far away nowadays. Very few have them.
So
like,
Lido Hall 1 and Hall 4 have a toilet inside.
Lido will be the best.
Lido Hall 1 and Hall 4 on suite.
I was thinking the one scene where they're like in the interrogation cell, like later on, and it's Gordon whispering to Batman. I was thinking maybe you can go, but it's not long enough for you to go.
Okay,
yes,
no,
because after that there's an action scene. The next scene after that is an action scene.
Yeah, that's why you can't.
Unless you really don't care. If you really don't care, then it's the car chase scene. If you really don't care.
Yeah, if you don't get action, right?
Which is also one of the best.
Exactly. But
so we're kind of stuck.
You know how some people really like, okay, action scene, okay, maybe
they tune out a bit,
Yeah, so
because there's no plot stuff during the car chase.
Exactly.
But there is right after.
That's the longest break you can have.
Yeah, when he's still in the car, a plot thing happens after the car chase. That's the problem, but that also means it's constructed well. That also means that
it's very
put
well
it together well, right? If you're having trouble looking for downtime,
It's amazing, because I too was trying to see when will be your best time for me to pee, just in case, right? But there really isn't any.
Yeah, that was Tina's mission to me. Her directive was, tell me when.
Because it's a long movie, right? Like, definitely you would need to take a
especially if you have lunch before that.
Oh, I had like a huge Sprite with me. I'd be like, why?
Yeah, you have to have like the sort of monk-like discipline of, I will not get a drink, I will not drink before, I will not buy a soda.
I had a drink with me. Drink with me also. And then
a large Sprite.
And then I think around like the 1 hour mark, I'm like, okay, I'm not touching this drink anymore.
Yeah.
There's this app or website called Runpee, RUNPEE, and basically it's just a person who watches a movie and identifies when you can take a pee break. So I'm so curious to see what their report on this film is. So that is a useful resource if you need it. RUNPEE, which is a great name as well. Free advertisement for Runpee.
The spoilery section at the it's almost like already past the halfway point.
We've been very disciplined about this.
This time, John, please share with the audience about if there were any post-credit scenes, but not too
Oh
much.
yeah,
We'll talk about the details later.
there is one post credit scene. Whether it's important or not, um, debatable. But there is one. If you enjoy seeing post credit scenes, this one might tickle you, especially. I would say if you like ARGs, like alternate reality games, or those kind of marketing uh, games, right? If you like taking part in this, then do stay for the post credit scenes.
All right.
This post credit scene will not be relevant 6 years down the road. They need to remove it from the digital
DVD. Yeah,
versions. Yeah,
it's
the
more like a
DVD.
gag. It's
DVD.
a bit more like
Yeah,
a gag. Yeah,
And
yeah.
also, what we mean by post-credit is not the mid-credits or whatever. It's
Right,
really the
right
yeah.
at
post
the end.
At the
credits.
very
Right
end.
at the
At
end.
the
Right,
very,
that's
very
right.
end.
Yeah,
So if
Yeah,
you
yeah.
really, don't mind and not in a hurry to go pee.
yeah.
Because there are incidences where there's like the thing at the very, very end and people get mad at it. Like I remember the Birds of Prey one, like people got angry.
Yeah, no, there was a guy behind me who was mad, and he was like,
Yeah,
"That's
yeah,
it." I'm
right?
like,
Yeah.
"This is not a Marvel movie."
Yeah, you're
Yeah,
right.
yeah, yeah.
Can't really
you're
expect
not
But
you're not
from it.
obligated,
Yeah.
you're not owed
yeah,
a thing at the end. But at the same time, I understand if you're upset because it's 3 hours long and you're like, come on, come on, come on.
Yeah.
I need
regardless,
to
you should
go.
actually sit through just to thank, as a form of thanks to all the people who work on the
And
project.
also to listen to the score, which is
Yes.
something that I always
It's
like
very good.
staying behind to listen to, like the soundtrack suite over the
Yeah.
end.
Also,
Yeah,
sometimes I
so
check out the credits of which comic book creators have been given credits at the end.
yeah,
The
who's a special
finger.
thanks,
Yeah.
right? Yeah, yeah.
All right. So now we are at the point where we're gonna go like spoilerish. So
Spoiler.
if you haven't watched the movie yet and you don't want to hear anything, you can leave the room, or you can
You
just watch
plug,
this entire
plug,
live stream.
plug in your ear and go la 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 la.
La la
You're
la la,
Oh,
la. Like John
already
Economos, yeah.
already to
in
talk
Peacemaker,
about
it's la la la
the
la
movie
la.
because you're so
That
in
works.
love with it. All right, my first question, or rather my lead into this discussion. I don't read too many comics. I think a lot of people know that. I kind of know all these properties and characters based on watching TV, cartoons, movies, and sometimes one or two comics a year or something like this, but not all the time. So I don't follow a comic book series. So I wasn't aware when the review came. I wasn't aware that there was a story that depicted Martha Wayne as an Arkham. So therefore, then I began to read out that it was actually based on a comic book series as well. And I know that Matt Reeves took a lot of influences from different types of stories from the comics as well, games. I think a lot of the style fighting was like the Arkham games, and then there are a lot of Easter eggs going on that probably a comic book reader or game player would spot right away. So, John, please share some of the things that you saw when you were watching the movie. Like, did you kind of like know straight away like these were the influences from which comics and so on?
okay, so because it's a year two story, I definitely when my mind went to the year one book, Batman year one, where it's really showing Batman in his first year. He's also not at his peak. He's also learning the ropes. He's struggling with his the the dual life. But after watching the movie and discussing with Jedd, he did remind me that there is a story called Earth One, and this one I did forget a lot about it, but when I started thinking about Earth One, I said yes, this movie really pulls a lot from
Okay.
that story, because Earth One is where Martha is an Arkham, and Thomas Wayne actually owes a lot of his success due to his relationship with her, because the family is very influential. They help him get a lot of deals, and it also follows in it's a 3 volume book of one. The first volume, it follows basically Batman and his learning about the conspiracy about his family, the conspiracy surrounding why his parents were killed. His father was just also, like the movie, he was going to run for mayor, and then it he was killed in what seems to be a random mugging, but when Batman started digging further into it, like when he grew old, um, it really shows that there is a greater conspiracy behind it.
Mm.
In the comic, the difference is that in the comic it's Penguin that is the one that's pulling the strings,
Ah,
whereas in the movie they changed it
no,
a bit.
they thought it was him.
Yeah, they thought it was him. He was a red herring,
Yeah.
and it's very interesting. And volume 2 onwards, they show Riddler in the background, um, perpetrating serial killings, killing people, leaving clues, and his overall goal is to actually find out who the Batman is. He's very interested in who this vigilante is, and so there's a lot of similar things. I think I can share one or two screens with you
Sure. Go ahead.
where maybe let me see how should I do this.
Share at the bottom.
Yeah, share screen.
That's right. This is like a Teams meeting.
Yeah,
Let
no,
me share my screen.
because I have two monitors, so it's yeah. So I'm not sure if you can see. Is
No.
is it
No.
showing the correct screen? No, it's not.
Okay, right.
Oh yes, there it is.
There we go. All
So
Yay.
right. Yeah.
yes, this is
Nice.
actually a panel from the comic of one,
Oh wow. Okay.
and this is also similar in a movie where they
Yeah.
find the Riddler's
The love
room,
letters.
and then they show his background. He actually has a clipping that says who is Batman with all his
He has his
monitors
serial
around.
killer lair.
Yeah,
Mm.
yeah, yeah. So I thought this was a very very nice touch, and
Interesting.
Matt Reeves really put a lot from this story to put in the show, where he is a more menacing Riddler that we're used to. We're
Mm.
very familiar with Jim Carrey's buffoon, and this one is really just Saw meets Zodiac, where he has all his. It's not just puzzles for Batman, but it's also puzzles for the victims. They need to figure out a way
Oh
to
God.
save themselves. Like the commissioner, he's trapped in like this saw
Oh
like
no, like
a trap, and
With
it's
the
hinted that
rats.
his face actually gets destroyed by the trap, and they don't really show you what happened to him, but it hints of that. And I'm actually very impressed because this show is a PG-13 show, but it also feels like it very much wants to be a R-rated show.
It
yeah.
walks right
God.
up to that line,
He just
right on
Yeah,
up to
it
that
And then
line,
it
and
just
it's
pulls
really
very
you back.
intense.
yeah.
Yeah.
He
yes.
No,
hints,
there's
but it
gonna be like
doesn't show you.
parents who are gonna bring like 7-year-old kids to this, and it's not gonna be good.
Yeah, it's gonna end in tears.
Because they are
That
really
Okay.
promoting the toys and the tie-ins and everything as if it is a kid-friendly movie, which is the funniest thing. Like
yeah.
there's this graphic of a car, the bat like a police car toy, and it's Gordon in one seat and Batman jumps into the seat next to him. And it's like it looks
Buddy
very
cops.
cute. Yeah, it's like getting loser, we're going shopping from Mean Girls. So yeah, to build on to what John said about Riddler being based on the Zodiac Killer, there's a very interesting video on YouTube by David Oranchak. So David Oranchak is one of the three cryptographers who broke the 340 cipher. So he himself has experience studying the history of Zodiac Killer, and he made a video where he talks about all the connections between Zodiac Killer and Batman comics and also pop culture at the time. And the different pop culture references that Zodiac used in his messages, and the other pop culture that around the same time seemed to be referencing Zodiac.
Yeah.
So that's something to look out for. David Oranchak, Oranchak. He made a very interesting video, and the video was made before the movie came out. So I'm interested to hear what he has to say after he actually watches the movie, because
Wow,
they
that'd be interesting.
do a lot. Like he literally goes, "This is the Riddler speaking," and all of Zodiac's letters became, "This is the Zodiac speaking." That's how they began.
Wow.
So the references are very, very close. And the thing that he wears on his head, that's a US Army extreme cold weather mask.
Mm.
And like one of the criticisms, again, we're talking about the iconography hasn't reached the point that everyone is familiar with. He isn't like wearing a green suit with question marks and a bowler hat, right? But the idea that this costume of Riddler is easy to replicate that becomes a plot point later on. The idea that someone can go on the internet and buy this,
It's
right?
a fortune,
That becomes
bro.
important. Yeah.
Yeah,
That at the end they fight the Riddler army. You know, that there's
it's
a lot of
basically a whole
people
group
wearing
of,
this same outfit and they are all fighting Batman at the same time in the stadium in Gotham
like a
Square
Reddit-
Garden. Yeah,
a
yeah.
Reddit
Like in
group.
the chat, right? They're trying to figure out, oh, well, you can get this from the Gotham supply store.
Yes, I love that. I love that he thanks his followers for tips about detonators,
Yeah.
which is the funniest part of the
Hi
movie.
guys.
Hi guys.
Like,
Then there's like a chat
It's-
that's scrolling. Yeah.
Patreon for
It's the
villains.
TikTok terrorist, right? You know?
Oh god.
So that's another thing to me that's interesting. It's because whenever you deal with something like this, immediately you will date the movie, but the movie is trying to feel timeless. It's trying to have that noir feeling, a little bit like Batman the Animated Series, where there's modern day technology, but the surroundings look like it could be the 30s and the 40s.
It's a
So I think
modern
that balance, right, is a modern noir where you're taking advantage of the ecosystem of the internet, of cable news, of media cycle, all of these things. But
Yeah.
and like he edits a video. He like, instead of doing a traditional kind of thread letter, he has a video package. You know,
So
so
he has the time, right? He has the time.
yeah. When he has a thing, like suddenly he'll go, you know, there's a graphic of Thomas Wayne and there's a graphic of this reporter, Edward Elliot, and then you see it says hush. And like, oh, it's a reference. Yeah. So
I
it's yeah.
I really giggle at the Easter eggs on when penguins' legs were
Waddling.
Yeah,
Waddling.
that's kind of the best. Yeah. So to build on what John was saying, I think year one is one of the obvious influences. So one of the things that you see from it is the relationship between Batman and Gordon, because year one is very much a story about Batman and Gordon getting to become
I love it.
partners.
Yeah.
So
Best
that part of the
friends.
movie is one of the most satisfying parts of the movie, seeing the way that
was
Gordon
very
trusts Batman and brings him into the investigations, and the way the other GCPD officers doubt Gordon, and Gordon is like, no, listen to him. Him being here is important.
I think credit has to be given to Jeffrey Wright though. He
Oh,
gave so
God,
much
yeah.
gravitas and like groundedness to the character that you're
Like
not
he
Hey,
feels
man.
trustworthy, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
and like he's
And-
also like a a cop has done this for years and years and decades.
And
Like
sh-
he's trusting
yeah.
his instincts as well.
So
I really-
another year one connection is the mob, like the mob being corrupt and controlling Gotham's politics. And then visually also the look of Selena Kyle, that she has like a buzz cut, and there's a scene where she is in like a white singlet and underwear that is visually straight from year one. So they are taking a lot of kind of visual cues from year one and plot cues from Earth One. And also there's a lot of Long Halloween, because the story is
Yes.
set on Halloween. It begins on Halloween, and the Falcone crime family is involved in
And
the
the
story as well.
narration.
Yeah, that this is a Batman
And
who has a diary, which is a thing that Atty liked a lot and I liked a lot as well. That he is like speaking into a recorder, he writes a diary and he's like,
Context.
all the nights have blurred together into one mass and I can't tell the difference anymore. And he's like, he's being emo, and that is something which a lot of movies would be frightened of. They'd be frightened of using this device because it is seen as old-fashioned or maybe
And
a bit
exposition.
clumsy. Yes, but in
But
this
then it's
case, it
noir.
really helps, right? Yeah, it's
Really
noir, and it's also like it emphasizes that this is a Batman who is stuck in his own head.
Yeah.
It's interiority. You are getting a glimpse into his head, and he's stuck inside his head.
Yeah.
You know, even more than many other versions of Batman before.
I really like that train melee fight scene because it was very visually like a game. The one in the first one,
The beginning.
the beginning. Yeah, I really enjoyed that one. It looked
Yeah, when
Yeah,
he goes to rescue the guy, and then the guy's like, "Oh no!" and the guy thinks like Batman is
good,
gonna
you
attack
know?
him. Yeah,
And then
One-
the
one
thing is,
thing-
like, everyone keeps staring at the shadows.
Yeah,
Yeah. It was like
This show, in terms of world building, right, it really shows you how how terrible Gotham is. Like compared to any
Correct.
other Batman movie,
correct.
Gotham here is really a hellhole.
Yeah.
It's
It shows
just crime
real,
everywhere.
as you say, the real life, realistic part of being in a city like that.
But
you know.
it also managed to show how much fear Batman has
Managed
created.
to create. Yeah.
Like how
In
much
the
he is
2
a
years,
symbol of
right?
fear. Yeah, in the 2 years, like the robbers are just looking down alleyways, like the paint can just running down alleyways. They hear sounds and it's like, oh no, the boogeyman's there.
But they
Batman
see
is
the best thing.
Batman is
oh
there.
my God,
They-
God.
they they see the bat singer and they start panicking, they start running. It really helps you build like this, like what a symbol Batman became.
Mm.
And then at the end of the movie, it, he learns to be a different symbol. He learns
Yeah,
that he cannot just be a symbol of fear
correct.
It
because
can't be vengeance. He
yeah,
Yeah,
can
it can't be
also
like
be
this.
hope.
Yeah, yeah,
because if he is only a symbol of fear, that also motivates
yeah,
villains. It motivates
Mm.
people to also
yeah,
be a symbol of fear.
yeah.
He needs to be a symbol of hope to help the normal citizens get
Correct.
better,
So that's the part
and
I
it's
was saying
very cool.
earlier, where I was not happy with how most of the villains are being written, how they are being crafted in recent superhero movies. So it went through, and then towards the end, right, where Batman decided to, he kind of like, I can't just do all these kind of things and beating up bad people all the time. It doesn't solve the problem, and that's where it ties into my initial dislike on that, and it became a better, like I felt better after that, that all the resolution and showing these people to be people who are socially disadvantaged. Then the Batman comes in and he's trying to rectify this in his own way as well. So in a way, what my dislike became a like at the
Mm.
end. uh,
And there's
it was
a
just like there,
supporting.
and then there was nothing done to it. There is some kind of resolution, some step forward. I mean, the white part concerning the car when he went that as well. There's some steps towards bridging the gap rather than just thinking that okay, so the guy because like that, that's
Yeah,
what
so
I.
there's a supporting character that we haven't really brought up, and it's Bella Real, who is the mayoral candidate, and she's played
Yeah,
in the movie by James Lawson. And there is a sequence at the end of the movie where she tells Bruce Wayne that he has a role to play as well, like the
correct.
charitable foundation that his parents set up, like his
Mm.
legacy. He has to step out and be a public figure because earlier in the movie, Bruce Wayne insists that his legacy is being Batman.
Yeah,
Mm.
And I think that this process of sort of like drawing him out, and it goes with him deciding that he has to become more of a figure of hope, and him like realizing that it's not just about fighting bad guys but also about helping everybody else.
yeah,
And another thing that I do like about this movie, about finding him in a year two state, is that he is intimidating, but at the same time he makes a lot of mistakes. He's figuring things out. And there's a sequence that is one of my favorite bits in the movie where he's about to jump off like the
right.
Yeah,
TCP
I
yeah.
building
know,
and he
right?
freaks out
I
Yeah, he
and
know.
he is
hesitates.
scared. Yeah,
Yeah,
and
so
then
good.
they this is like they're trying to we're very used to seeing Batman gliding and flying around like the
That's
mechanic in the
yeah,
Arkham games.
real
You,
life.
you don't hesitate. You don't take a moment's
There's woo.
yeah. You just that's just fine, right? That's what
Mm.
Batman does. But then you realize as a human being that is not a natural thing to do. And also
Yeah.
in this movie, they try to have the most like quote unquote realistic version of the wingsuit, where it
Mm,
is like a squirrel suit. There is going to be a parachute you have to deploy,
correct.
so it isn't like a glider that all of the other
Yeah,
movies have. So it doesn't work in this movie. It doesn't work properly. Like because Gotham is built up, he throws the parachute out against
correct.
cotton overpass, and
And
then
he's
he
not
tumbles
Spider-Man.
and yeah.
Yeah.
So that's the thing that is fun about this is that you see the trial and error process. And one thing that Matt Reeves emphasizes that everything is homemade. The suit is homemade, the car is homemade, the gadgets are homemade. He doesn't have like Lucius spots on board yet, you know.
Yeah. You know
So
what it
it's a
reminds
very
me of?
unrefined, yeah.
It reminds me of like Spider-Man 1.
Yes. Where
Where,
everything is all homemade. Yeah.
yeah, and then
Go
when
web, go! Up and away, web.
exactly right. So that was when movies I felt that superhero movies were like still raw.
Yeah,
Uh and as time goes by it kind of
the
lacks that.
CGI took over.
Not just the CGI, it's just like the convenience of having technology.
Yeah,
I miss that actually.
yeah, true.
Yeah, and that's a good point, right? Because if you contrast in recent movies like Iron Man's nano suit versus in the first few movies where there are so many mechanical components,
Yes.
where they built like physical, legacy
Correct.
effects, built a suit that has the
Yeah.
flaps and that has the actuators
Yeah.
and things going like that.
And he
Whereas
did
now,
an entire room.
it just like peels away from his face, and there
Yeah.
isn't the tactility that you don't feel something interacting with something else, and that
Mm.
tactility is something that is very important to this take on Batman. Like you want to feel that when the Batmobile smashes into something, it's actually like metal against concrete against metal. Yeah.
I really like it because this you don't see that in superhero movies nowadays. Like every gonna hit is like nothing. Like here, you really feel as if he felt it. He felt
Until he
it.
has to use adrenaline.
I love that it showcases how bad capes are.
Yeah, that
Really?
hindrance. Like Edna
really
Mode
is
had
a
a point,
hindrance.
right? Edna Mode had a point, exactly. Yeah, no capes.
Yeah, it's,
So yeah, I want to have like a little sidebar, and I want to talk about this concept of realism. Like, what do we mean when we say realistic? And I think like in the past, even going on 10 years, like gritty and realistic has kind of become this joke. People say, oh, gritty and realistic as a way to mock this approach. But the thing is, I don't think there's such thing as a realistic Batman, right? Like if you go all the way down to the concept of the character of Batman, it's inherently fantastical. Like if somebody decided now in real life they want to be Batman, they're going to die. So, so the thing is, it's not about realism per se. It's about whether or not you can buy it, whether or not you can accept it. Where is the line that you kind of draw of suspension of disbelief? And I think the goal here is to create a Gotham that you buy as a real place. Like what Tina was saying, that you can accept it as a real city. So there are two extremes, right? Previously, we have seen a Gotham that exists only on a soundstage, where it's all huge sculptures of naked men, holding up the observatory like that. There's the Barbara Ling like production design, and then before that,
It's
there's
a
the
very
Anton First Bowell.
like mythological type of place. Right?
So that's one extreme. Then the other extreme is literally Pittsburgh. Like just Pittsburgh with no set dressing and a Dark Knight Rises. Like it's Heinz Field, it's just Pittsburgh. So this exists in
With
a very
a fog
nice middle
machine.
ground, right? Where
But
it
then
is,
again, in the comics, it's not Pittsburgh. It's not that kind of city. So it's
where
almost
it's designed.
designed almost like a New York City. So it's kind of like that.
So
And
I think what
therefore-
James Chinlund did, right? I think his production design mandate, I feel like it was make New York more European. So that's why they went to like Liverpool, Manchester, Glasgow, because it is a more European flavor of New York.
The architecture actually it speaks for
just
itself.
different. Yeah. And it's quite interesting how his Wayne Manor is actually at the top of like a Gothic looking building.
oh yeah, it's not
Wayne
it's not in the
Tower
outskirts,
is it's like a 70s idea apparently in the comics. They sort of shifted the base of operations to Wayne Tower, and they were doing that. And I also like the Batcave being the abandoned train station, because then you get this great like structural element of the arch and the balcony and the steps framing where the Batmobile would come into park. And I really want the Lego set of that. Like the Lego set of that looks very nice. Yeah.
The
With the
best part
steps and
about
the-
Wayne Tower is that outside it looks very modern, but inside
Inside
it's still
it's
a
just
Gothic castle.
Yeah.
It's a clock. It's a clock tower, man.
It's
Right, yeah, it's like the birds
it's
of
so
prey kind
Gothic.
of clock tower, Yeah.
Right.
that
Especially
chairs
where
are
he
not
had
normal.
Right.
What kind of dining table is that?
Any scenes that surprised you or found unique?
Any
Before
scene
you
that
start wrapping up.
surprised me, I would say, actually, throwing back to my what I wanted to say earlier, but didn't want to spoil is Batman. He doesn't seem to care too much about uh collateral damage in this movie, and that's something that some people might pick up during the whole car chase scene. He's so tunnel vision into
Smashing.
catching Penguin that he causes a lot of mayhem here and there. And all those
But
truck
he
drivers
does-
are definitely dead.
But
Definitely.
he does have his no kill rule, right?
Yeah.
In this movie, he explicitly says it.
Yes.
No, but the thing is, right, you brought up a good point because I saw a Twitter thread that was talking about how this Batman killed less people than the Batman than Ben Affleck's Batman.
Yeah,
I'm
that
like, there's
was
no one at the
massive
shipyard.
No, but like again, I would say it's a different
It's a different thing.
time of Batman, because Batfleck is always portrayed as
older.
Batman.
Yeah.
20 years.
An
Yeah,
older
he's been doing
Batman,
it for
yeah,
20
20
years.
years.
Yeah.
So he's
a
already
broken
very
man.
jaded. Yeah, he's completely lost his way. So
He's
to
already
speak. I
lost
think-
the Robin. Yeah.
Yeah,
point,
his Robin's his support group is not there to pull him back, and that's something that Jedd and I have always said, that Batman has one of the best support groups
Um,
of all characters, because they
They
pull
never give
him
up
back
on him.
from the brink. Yeah, and they don't give up on him. No matter how much he says he's a loner, he has all his
I
all
know, right?
his entourage that will always pull him out of the ocean, pull him back from the brink. And
Yeah.
Batman Flag is where we see him without all of that. He has lost his support team, and that's why he is so angry. Whereas for this one, he's
He's
starting out,
angry, but
so he's angry in a different way. His one is that he
Depressed.
doesn't
parents
know that
died.
he
Yeah,
yeah
parents died.
he doesn't know the balance of
Yeah.
how to adhere to his rule of no killing, but
Mm.
still being frightening. And
Mm.
I think it's a very it's something that people might pull back from, but it's also definitely needed lah. I mean, it's very subtle. And the other part that I didn't want to talk about that's also a bit spoilery is the review that Carmine Falcone told him that, oh no, it's the other guy that hired someone to kill your parents, and that review it's not allowed to grow. It's immediately removed in the
Just
next scene
happened.
where he
Yeah.
speaks to Alfred, and Alfred's like, no, that's not
Yeah,
correct.
right.
That's the
I
end
thought
of
that
it.
was a
It's
bit.
not allowed to grow. So I think maybe in the director's cut, maybe there's a bit more scenes that we
Oh, yeah.
do not see where he pursues that line of thinking, and then it gets retcon or it gets
Yeah.
corrected. But there's just a very minor part that was a bit odd lah.
Mm.
And
Yeah. So sorry, go ahead, John.
yeah, and this show is very very good in showing what I would say, throwing back to another point that Jedd brought up, is the three characters, Catwoman, Riddler, and Batman, they're all orphans, and they all turn out so different.
Yeah.
And
It's
none of them went
nature
for
versus
therapy.
nature.
None of them went for therapy. So
Wait, Selena has cats. Okay, that's therapy
yeah,
enough. Okay?
Cat therapy.
she turned out the most normal of all of them.
Yeah,
Exactly.
To,
Cats
to, to
help.
be fair, and she was very smart. She's like, okay, I'm out. And the last part, she's like, I'm a dip.
I'm packing my cats.
She
and I'm
loads all
going.
the cats onto the bike is my favorite part of the movie. There's like 5 cats hanging on for dear life onto this motorcycle.
Although moving to Blood Heaven probably not the
not
smartest
the best
choice.
idea.
But I'm a sucker for that. I love when you say a location that's from a comic and when you like say a
Yeah.
character
And you
name
go,
from a comic.
I was like, I don't know why. I'm just hoping that maybe if
Nightwing,
it goes
Nightwing.
into sequels, there'll be Nightwing.
Yeah, so for me, like the one thing that I really want out of a live action iteration of Batman, whether it's TV or movies, is a fully
Batman.
formed Bat
Yeah.
family. And we have almost gotten there and never actually gotten there
No.
multiple times. Because the thing
Titans
is
is
that
like Titans go.
so one of the problems is that when you do year 2, it means that you're setting yourself, okay, it's going to take another like 10, 15, 20 years before we reach a fully formed Bat family. Yeah. And the other thing is that obviously the difficulty with this that can be overcome in comics and animation that is hard to do in live action is passage of time. Because your comic book time is flexible, right? Like you can have a Batman who doesn't visibly age and then he goes through like 3 or 4 Robins.
Yeah.
But then if you're doing that in a time, and that's another thing that Titan struggles with, because they brought in Jason Todd and like immediately he becomes Red Hood. So then that doesn't really work because in the comics that takes time. But you can't, that kind of time, like you can't do that in live action. So that's another thing where that's a hurdle to overcome, because eventually you want to get to a place where you got Luke Fox, where you got Huntress, where you got everybody like built out around, but that you got to stick with it. And we know that these things, it doesn't really last that long. They reboot them. It works, it doesn't work, they reboot it. And that's why we have been almost getting to a Bat family. Like, how long have they been talking about Nightwing movie, in the DCEU?
That's why Atty will hate me by saying that's the CW.
Right, yeah.
Because they will go into seasons and
My biasness against CW has no bounds.
No, and I was talking to Azmi right before this, and I was saying that it just occurred to me that there are concurrently 4 or 5 separate live action Bat universes, right? There's Gotham, there's DCEU, there's the Arrowverse, there's the Titans
Gotham
verse, there's
is
this
gone
one.
already, what?
Yeah,
Gotham
it's
is
like
finished.
Gotham
So
is,
we had
is,
a
is
period.
ended, but
It's
if you're
ended.
talking about in recent memory, there are at least 5 separate
Yes, there
live
is.
action
Correct.
Batman universes. So that is another thing where DC is struggling with like the cohesiveness and struggling to give you one version. But at the same time, I like that. I like having multiple different takes on one idea existing concurrently. I like that.
But
Yeah,
also
I
the
feel like-
genre. Yeah, go on,
Oh.
Atty.
Oh, sorry. I feel like people should learn that there could be more than one Batman.
Yeah, I mean there are different Earths and so on.
So,
Because
yeah,
if you read comics, you're like there are multiple runs going on at the
Right,
same
yeah.
time of different
then
like
it's-
interpretations. Yeah.
why is it easy for you to do that, but not easy for you to do
Yeah,
it for a
right.
movie, right?
Exactly. Just
Like,
separate
as-
them.
As much as I want Henry Cavill to still be Superman, it's not gonna happen. So
So you have
I
Tyler
really-
Hoechlin. Yeah.
yeah,
So
I really want them to make the web comic into an animated series or
The
Bat
one where
family.
he is
show,
his sons.
right,
Yeah.
So I've heard kind of like, I don't know whether it's official, but apparently, right, the DC has said that there will be one main character at any one time on screen. So like if I'm not sure when the Flash CW is coming back on, maybe before or after the Flash movie, maybe. It seems like they don't want to confuse viewers, so maybe there's only like one at one time. So now you have Batman, right? But there really isn't any Batman on screen right now, per se, in the series.
because he dead, he missing.
So
Yeah,
the interesting thing to me is like if you look at the set photos of Batgirl, it's very confusing because their Batman is Michael Keaton.
yes.
Their Gordon is J.K. Simmons. So they are
Yeah.
mashing
Oh,
up.
no, we haven't watched
the-
the Flash yet. We don't know
Yeah,
what
they're
happened.
mashing up the button. Yeah, so something happened. Something happened in Flash
Yeah,
that
we
leads
haven't
to
watched it.
a reconfigured default universe
Correct.
that is
And-
pulling in pieces from 89, pulling in
I
pieces from the
believe
DCU.
they have probably something worked out.
New 52.
Yeah, they probably have
Yeah.
something worked out that they are not sharing, and it might be a booms, surprise kind of thing. But for us,
Hopefully.
for those that the Flash is related to a lot of multiverse, I sense there's something coming.
But
Something
the
on
thing
that.
that's frustrating about DC, about Warner Brothers, is that there's always these mandates, like they had the Bat embargo for
Yeah.
the animated series because there was the Batman going on, so you couldn't use Robin, you couldn't use any of the supporting characters in Justice League Unlimited, which was kind of a handicap. And similarly, like it just came out that the reason why Poison Ivy was only such a short arc in Batwoman is DC said you can have her for 3 episodes. So these are all the things like kind of the handicaps behind the scenes that we don't know. That
Yeah.
maybe
Yeah.
they said these are the rules, you can do this, you can't do that. So one thing that I do like is that the Batman doesn't feel like it. It doesn't feel like there's an invisible hand telling Matt Reeves you can do this and you can't do that.
Yeah.
It feels
Yeah.
like they could do everything they wanted to do with the characters they wanted to use,
Exactly.
But I'm sure there's some. Probably
Yeah.
it's not.
I saw Walter Hamada's name. I'm like, single-handedly ruined everything.
it's very frustrating being a DC fan is something
know,
that we all accept by now.
Yeah.
So another thing that I wanted to bring up that we haven't talked about yet is, of course, the big, sequel bait scene where Riddler is in prison, and there's an
You mean the
unseen.
very last?
Yes, there's an unseen Arkham prisoner, played by Barry Keoghan, who talks about clowns and who laughs. So I wonder who that might be.
It is
So-
confirmed.
So the thing that is
Two-Face.
fun. So the thing about that is that okay, I like that scene, right? It's nice, but at the same time, it sticks out a bit compared to
Yeah.
the rest of the thing. Like it is the most fan servicey kind of moment in the film.
Mhm.
Because until that
Not
point,
everybody wants that guy to come on.
that's right, yeah. And
Yeah.
I couldn't help but think of the tease at the end of Batman Begins, which to me is still the most elegant sequel bait that's ever been done. Where it's like Gordon is like, take this guy for example, double homicide, armed robbery,
Just-
has
yeah,
a
it's
taste for the
a
theatrical like
byline,
you, leaves a calling
Yeah.
card, turns the card over. That to me is like nobody has matched that in terms of how elegant a build up that is.
leading
Yeah.
to the next character.
So there are a lot of ways in which you cannot escape comparing this to Batman Begins because both of them are kind of origin stories, even though this is a little bit after. And then when you have teasing Joker for the next one, whenever that might be, that is another thing that you compare it to, because like I feel like that's another thing, because people have in their heads a Batman, and people also have in their heads a Joker. And any Joker that comes along is either like you accept it or you don't. You know, you either accept Jared Leto or you don't. You either accept Joaquin Phoenix or you don't. And now, right? And now you have Barry Keoghan, right? So we need to see like what is going to happen with that, and that there's whether or not they will go through with it, because Matt Reeves has actually said that it may not be that they use him for the second one. You know, which I think would be interesting if they don't. But I think now there's pressure too. Once you have that scene, there's pressure to put him in the second one.
Correct.
DC knows that about the Jokers. They recently had an event called Joker War, which had three different Jokers in it. It was very
right. Because that's what sells the books.
Yeah, that's what sells our Joker. I can't apologize for my favorite Batman Joker dynamics, which is
in the Lego Batman
movie.
Yes.
I was like, which Joker is this?
Maybe I want to fight around.
This is the ultimate for me. Very hard.
Where it totally leans into like the, you know, we're destined to do this forever, that kind of thing. Two sides of the same coin. And I that's a lot of fun. I mean, I don't love Zach Galifianakis as the Joker voice, because it's so hard to replace, you know, Mark Hamill or anyone who is close to that, you know, Troy Baker. So that one, as much as I love Will Arnett as Lego Batman, I think Will Arnett is wonderful as Lego Batman.
He's delightful.
We're already 10 minutes past, so let us rate our how do we rate the Batman movie out of 5 Batcat smooches?
Now.
Okay, let me just put a smooch on. I don't have the actual movie one, but you know.
It's a good Batcat.
I love his expression. He's like not having any of it.
He's so stoic.
The same exact expression in the movie as well. He had no, He was
because
like,
Robert Pattinson's Batman has no time for this nonsense. That's the vibe that you get.
He's spoken for.
It's like Zoe Kravitz is like playing with him and toying with him, and he's like, I don't have time for this. I want to go home. You know?
want to sleep.
Okay, how do you rate the Batman movie out of 5 Batcat smooches? Atty and then Jedd.
Yes.
4.5 out of 5 for me. It's a really good movie.
4.5. 5.
Yeah. No, 4.5 out of 5. Yeah.
Okay, 4.5 out of 5 from John.
I'm a simple person. I like Batcat 5.
And Jedd.
I was between a 4 and a 4.5, and I landed on 4.5. I think that it pushes past that barrier between 4 and 4.5. For me, is a huge gap. It's half a star, but if you look at like the movies that I gave 4 versus the movies that I gave 4.5, you can kind of see where my brain is at and how I process that and make the decision. It went into 4.5.
Yeah, I hardly think about 4.5 because that would be like almost perfect already. But it's close. It's close, and it's another movie as well. Because I mean, I didn't expect to enjoy it so much, you know, for a movie this long. Because usually they have so much plot and so much exposition. But
especially in a year where we are so inundated with superhero movies.
And I do like the starting point of year 2 as well. It's a very, very unique starting point for me. So it was 4.5 bad smooches. I think that's the general.
Yeah, I'm so generous. Why am I so generous?
And I think, you know, this is a movie that is like, it's a fan service movie, but it's also not, right? Because we've seen so many movies that are constructed.
You don't feel that they're just delivering something, you know,
for the sake of delivering.
There is a story, there is a cohesive character development, you know, and the sets are there to service it with the music, everything.
Because in 2021, right, we had so many movies where they are built around Leonardo DiCaprio pointing at the screen. They're built around that thing. You know, whether or not they do it well or not. You know, you got Space Jam, A New Legacy, you got Ghostbusters Afterlife, you got Spider-Man No Way Home. So these are all movies that are built on, that's that thing. You like it, right? Don't you like the thing? And it's so tempting to do that with Batman because Batman is so well established. But it is not that kind of a movie. Even though there are references, there are Easter eggs, it is not built on that foundation. And I appreciate it for that.
Yeah, I love that too. So for those who haven't watched
the Batman
movie, go watch it. we all recommend that, even though if you're not a comic book fan or you don't really know what the superhero is all about, it's a great starting point. So just go watch it, and then
And it's
let me know what you
customary
think.
for me at the end of these things to apologize for interrupting everyone so much.
You didn't even
Okay.
sneeze at all.
It's
We are
alright.
all
It's alright.
excited.
There's no sneeze. There's no sneezing.
Yeah, I feel
Yeah,
much
you
better.
didn't sound Tell everybody where we can find you on social media, and then I'll do my wrap up, and you stay on screen, and I'll bring you back on later after my outro. Starting from John.
I'll be at Thought Dust on Twitter and Instagram. You can follow me if you want to see me
Down
tweet or talk about manga or comics that I'm reading at that moment. Whichever it might be.
Jedd.
Yeah, so most places I'm at Jedd the Jedi, JEDDTHEJEDI. I also have a movie review Instagram account called Jedi the Movie Guy, JEDITHE Movie Guy, and then I'm on Facebook as Jedd Yong Writer. So those are the places that you can find me, and yeah, everything points to everything else. So don't worry, if you find me one place, you can find me other places. Yeah, yeah. Google me and ignore the embarrassing things.
And Eddie.
You can find me on Instagram and Twitter at ATTYARR, or you can read my blog, which is like half dead, at thisisatika.com.
And you can find me at Red or Diva, Instagram, Facebook page, my new YouTube channel.
Yeah. If you're watching this, you've already found Tina. Just stay
All
right
right,
here.
hold
Stay
on
right
for
here.
a while, and I'm gonna do an outro and tell them what's coming up for maybe this month and the next.
Yep.
Okay, so thank you for watching, especially if you are doing that post live. And hope you enjoy our chat about the Batman, where we geek out about the different aspects of the movie, what we enjoyed and what we didn't find were that's not very much that we didn't really enjoy, but there were some points that were being brought up. For the next, let me see. I have during my last live stream, I mentioned that there was a guest for March Live with Red Dot Diva, but there's been a switcheroo. So she's asked for a postponement, and she'll be a guest in April. I will announce that later when we have our promo images ready for announcement. But for March, I'm hoping that another guest will come on as well. He said yes. I'm also trying to get more information, like his profile, and to get our promo images done for the announcement. So hopefully that will come soon, and you can look out for that on my social media pages. If not, then probably we'll have a break for March, and you can tune in for April for a Southeast Asian creator as well. She's from Malaysia, and I think we have a interesting topic set up for that. I hope you can join in. More info coming soon. And if you are someone who you would wish to have appear as a guest on my live stream, I'm hoping for a Southeast Asian creator. They could be a writer, an artist, a cosplayer, even a content creator. Anybody that creates something who is based in Southeast Asia, I would like to give them a spotlight via my live stream, so that those who are watching in will get to know them better, because I feel that we need more representation on the talented folks who are based in our region. So I'm going to bring back all my other friends again, wonderful DC geeks and my really good friends that I miss meeting in live in person. Thank you for joining me. I think it was a very, very fun chat about the Batman. And then we hope that we'll probably do this again when another superhero movie comes along.
Is it Black Adam?
Yeah, until then, bye everyone. We'll see you again soon.
Bye-bye. Thanks again for
Bye.
having me, Tina. And
Thanks.
always good to get to talk to you,
Thanks for
John.
having